Hello again, thank you for joining me for another video. So I'm feeling slightly better. The weather is improving, and that is improving my outlook on life. They go hand in hand for me. So I'm gonna tackle that video about alters, and there's no way to talk about alters, secondary personality states, or identity issues without also talking about tulpas, without talking about entities, egregores, collective ideas of gods and goddesses, and it's all the same fundamental metaphysics. A lot of times we take psychology to be something that is absurdly disconnected from the way that reality actually operates. And if you look at the way that reality actually operates, and the clues we've been given in thousands of pages of text of people who have deeply investigated the metaphysical and philosophical nature of being alive and contemplating the fact that you are alive, then we'll get some idea a little better of what's going on. If you think of yourself as a mechanical beast, this all becomes much more complicated because it's not what you are. You don't move in a straight line. You move outward as if from a center, and you interact with points of other people's expanding centers. And it creates quite an interesting view of reality if you can see things that way. But let me not go off on weird tangents. I have to flow a little bit. I can't take notes on a subject like this because it is actually quite hinting at the nature of everything. And so anytime something kind of gets right up to the edge of comprehending everything, picking which layer of the onion to investigate can be tricky if at any time you forget, that an onion is a topping on tacos. It's a prebiotic. So every time there's a trauma, a personality develops. So every time there is an impactful change in the operating conclusions that you are functioning in your reality with, I think that trauma creates personalities, and personalities are these complex algorithmic responses to the environment. And so they have a lot to do with the soul, but as expressed in the environment. So the same soul is not going to act, it's not consistent. Like people are like, oh, it's so easy to be good. You just get in your $65,000 car, you go to your $250,000 job, and you come home to your $250,000, $500,000 house, and perfect spouse, and happy children. Be good. It's not hard. It's very different. That soul in a setting, downtown Detroit or Minneapolis, or the backwoods of Arkansas. It's going to act different because environment does impact. And the longer that you're in a certain environment, the more habitual the personality expresses in a certain way. And so when you have trauma, those habits are hard to break. And if you can recognize that personality arises out of it's a complex algorithmic pattern in response to a predictable set of stimuli. And you might not realize that it's all there, but it is. And so, in the same way that the trauma of death we don't remember our past lives. The trauma of death creates this barrier, this wall. The mini traumas that occur in our psyche while we're living in one continuous body also create this strange barrier. And on either side of that barrier can feel like two different personalities, two different people. And so much so that the way that what can happen is a form of communication. You're communicating with yourself, but you don't recognize it as yourself because there's no continuity, because there's that little break where the trauma happened. It's like it deletes a certain aspect of awareness is not present there. We're just in our non-mind space there. And it messes with the way memories are organized. So communication can be different. And then while in that state of communication, you can end up identifying and personifying this aspect of your psyche and a complex set of algorithms dealing with the environment as a separate person, to the point of naming and being able to fall in and out of that altered state. It's an altered state of consciousness that presents as a personality because it is that complex. And it can even get like sealed in, and it really points to the interesting nature of how reality actually functions with this interface of persona. So it isn't quite as easy as dropping the ego, because these are survival mechanisms that come into play as a result of trauma. And so people who have never had a trauma, they don't recognize that they're still built the exact same way. Theirs just happens when they die, or when they did die last time. And I'm basing that off the fact that so much circumstantial evidence and anecdotal evidence is present regarding the continuation of some form of consciousness. There seems to be a permeability. I think we don't understand enough about the veil and where exactly in our mental space it exists. But from what I gather, it operates a bit like osmosis. And so once you grow your spirit big enough, your consciousness, your awareness, there's an osmosis that happens at the edge there, where your awareness seeps into larger fields. And so these little traumatized parts aren't capable of doing that because they're shunted off. They're separated out. And an interesting thing, the correlations between Tulpas and Egregores and gods and goddesses and nature spirits that get named, and all of these larger complex structures interfacing with reality as it is, energetically, until they reach that dividing line between what is them and what is this new thing, and this osmosis that happens. Underneath that veil of selfhood, something can happen, which the best word for it is a consecration, a calling or naming, like putting a pin in it, a defining feature gets connected. And that attracts itself to itself, so that there is a consistency that permeates time. That veil is very connected to time, but it's connected in time in such a way that is hard to explain from the perspective of a 24-hour cycle while you're on Earth, because it isn't like that. And I think one of the best ways, I wanted to talk more deeply about tulpas. Well, let me say this, just so you can just ponder this, ponder the idea of personalities, the reactions to traumas, personality being complex algorithmic response to environmental stimuli. Egregores would be the same thing, but on a collective level. So you have collective traumas, and then you have these egregores that pop up, and it's all just a system of organizing. It's all like file system, a very intricate file system, interwoven into the fabric of reality. So this is going to sound weird, but one of the things I was thinking about as I've been contemplating this extensively for the last couple of weeks, because I've also been thinking about the demiurge and evolution and fallen angels, and why we name things what we name them, and how disjointed reality can be if what we've named something as a main character is not a character at all, or not true of the character, and we offer no character arcs or change. What does everything in relation to it become? And the way that the mirror can become the actor, and the actor become the mirror. Because reality is weird like that. Time is weird like that, truly. So I was thinking about NPCs, or the concept of NPCs, and the concept of the way that we create our gods, and the response, the ideals of leaders, of what we would consider a leader, and what that reflection is, and how we consecrate it with a name, and sometimes with a religion, and the gods show up and the gods go away. But that fundamental force that is giving it power is this essence of naming and consecrating something. And I think that's the interesting part about being a fully realized or awakening human, is acknowledging that you have been consecrated as a person within the schema of this environment. And you don't need to fractal yourself down any further. And coming back to one sense of self with just using your name can be really helpful for integration. And recognizing the spaces in society where we have created these named forces, and the impact that are, if you could sit and realize how your energy interacts with them. You know, it's almost all tulpas. It's almost all manifest. Like, you could be someone's manifested prayer, and then you are consecrated with a name. Like all of these NPCs, you know, some business owner needed workers, some business owner needed clients, customers, and created tulpas. And we're all fighting with that. You know, like, think about things in metaphysics in that way, and understand your strange relationship to reality might give you insights into how metaphysics works that other people don't have. And I could go off, you know, further and, you know, looking at Jesus as a why does it work? Why does it work as this overriding, you know, a negative tulpa comes to you, a negative entity of some kind, a foreign entity to your schema that doesn't fit, and then somehow that you're able to direct it, and you're able to command it, you know. And I'm not taking that as that's what the words say, but as someone who's done it myself and someone who's witnessed others do it. If you the point is that the name has been consecrated as equal to. And you can also do this with yourself, but it is a surrendering, and it isn't a overpowering. So you're not attempting to overpower or subsume or assume omnipresence, omnipotence, or all of the categories that God has, but rather to see yourself as a channel for such, and then not limit it. So as your limited self, it can only go so far. You take the limits off by way of that weird osmosis thing. Things are able to be transmuted really quickly. Prayer works for that reason. It is a means of taking yourself out of the equation. You can either attempt to puppet master the entirety of reality, which is limited by your own faculties, mental awareness, agreements, negotiations, or you circumvent that problem by going to a understanding of beyond the veil. And then beyond the veil is beyond definitions. That allows you to be both limited and unlimited at the same time. Because you're not requiring your limited self to hold the space of unlimited ability. I don't know if that got through. But it is the same concept on all these different levels, whether it be the part of you that got cordoned off from your own individual trauma, or these collective traumas, or these spiritual traumas. The limitations of a personality, the limitations of a personality as it is attempting to interface with reality. I guess I'll leave it there for now. Hopefully that helped give you some seeds for deeply thinking about these things, understanding the way that personalities are formed and why they're formed, seeing yourself as an essence that exists and can continue to exist. And then the problem is this strange mental block, which trauma creates. So hopefully that helped a little bit. Please feel free to leave comments below, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.